So, back, we've had a little break. We've had a little Satsuma break, I think, as we are recording this. If people hadn't picked up from the rest of the podcast, we are recording this around Christmas. So there are some Satsumas on the side. So we've just had a...
I eat Satsumas all year round.
Really?
Yeah, it's nothing.
You're
Christmas
just so rock and roll. You're just so rock and roll.
Well, I am known for eating
so you've gone from
fruit.
So as you've said it before, so you've gone from ket to Satsumas. That's your ketamine to Satsumas.
Oh, right, yeah.
That's your whole. That's what you've gone.
That's
from.
my thing.
The kids today call it ket. I'm sorry, you're clearly not down with the kids.
They don't know anything.
My teenagers, it's ket.
When I was taking it, it's not called ket.
It's like you just go for the full name. it's like the full name of the drug, or don't bother.
Yeah.
I like that.
No,
I like that attitude.
Maybe K, special K or something.
That's about calling that I'm eating a sat. It just doesn't work. It's a satsuma or nothing. Right, it might even be a tangerine. Right, so that's where we're going. So, this bit of the podcast, which is the point of the podcast, even though we had a long chat before, which was absolutely fantastic, covered a lot of topics, really, really interesting stuff. I'm sure the listeners are going to be fascinated with loads of that. It was a really good chat, and there'll be loads of links for them. If they didn't pick it up, I'm not expecting them to write it all down. We'll put loads of links on the website, popcricket.com. And then I'll also have probably some podcast notes on there, so they can pick it up from that as well. So I'll sort of put my questions on there, and I'll just put some various notes and stuff as part of the whole thing, so people can get involved more than just listening to it if they want to. So Pop Cricket, which I know you were a bit worried about this section because I sent you the rules and you claimed not to have had much time to read them properly. So in our break, I just had to go over them again.
I had time, but I didn't want to.
But you didn't want to.
It was a lot of words.
It was a lot of words on what I sent you because with the nuance of the rules. But I explained them to you quite quickly, and they made sense.
You also said before stating these several A4 pages of rules, you said, "Don't worry too much. It's better if you're a bit crap." Or something.
Yeah, because it'd be a bit more fun if everyone got them right. But I think the rules themselves and the way that I would apply them would stop anyone immediately getting them all right anyway. Because some things, as we will find in these songs, I think, are debatable. What I will say is that as it's my podcast and they're my rules and I made them up, then I am also the umpire, and therefore of most debates, then
you win.
What I win because what I say goes. In terms of how many legs or whether it even has any legs. For you and I, this sounds odd, having not got into the rules, but there will be some preamble at the front of the podcast, because if we don't explain what Pop Cricket and what the rules are at the front, then it won't make any sense. So I won't go over them again, other than the simple, which is legs equals runs and no legs equals wickets. It's not quite as simple as that, but that's the premise. As I'm sure people know by now, it's in the book, it's probably in the preamble, but it's taken from pub cricket, which was a game that people used to play in their cars when they were driving past pubs, and to stop kids getting bored on car journeys, then you used to count legs on pubs. So coach and horses would be the number of legs, that would be 12, and then if it was the crown, that would have no legs and therefore would be a wicket. And me and my sister used to play it when I was young, and I go into it all in the book, and at every chapter...
But isn't the crown a position, which would mean a person?
No. Oh, Christian, no.
Oh, I'm new.
No, you're new, a newbie. There are a second set of rules, which are only going to be available on the website, which my partner Trish, I think rather disappointingly, refers to as my pedantic rules. I like to call it the professional version. This being the normal version, which has a lot more complicated nuances on things like how you would have legs on groups and artist names. It gets very much into that, where what we're playing today is the more accessible normal rules, and the rules are all found on the website. So if people happen to bizarrely be coming into this podcast and only coming into it now and don't know what the hell that we're talking about, that's fine.
Like me.
Like you. That's fine, because they can go back and they can look on the website and they can find the rules and then come back and make sense of it. If people are only listening to this, hopefully as we go through it, they will pick up on what the rules are anyway by our chat. So what I'm going to ask you first is what your score is. So just so people that are listening, there is a list of 10 songs and artists. For this list, for Pop Cricket Game, they're all songs of yours or that you've been involved in. So I've just given you in the break the list, quickly explain the rules, and then you have scored. And the way that the scoring works is like a cricket score. because you have wickets for no runs and legs equals runs. We're looking for a cricket score. So, for example, a cricket score might be 124 for 7. So I'm going to ask you...
Isn't it 2-7? It's not 124 2-7.
No. Oh. No. It's 100 and... What did I just say? 124. So it'd be 124 runs for 7 wickets. Yeah. So that... So only struggling with the pop cricket rules, you're struggling with cricket rules and preposition and cricket rules. So a good job we haven't got a cricket star here as well. Freddie Flintoff in the room who would then, that would be an embarrassing faux pas, but we haven't. It's just you and I, so that's fine. So
just the world.
So just the world. Hopefully one day the world is listening to this podcast. So what is your pop cricket score for these songs?
192 to nothing? 4-0.
192 for 0, which is quite a good score. Probably more of an Australian cricket score than an England cricket score at the moment.
I think I get that.
You think you get that? Yeah, we didn't do very well in the Ashes at the moment. So it feels more like the Australian. Now, that's not bad, actually. That's not bad. If I tell you that the correct score, and by that, my game, my rules, the correct score is actually 162 for 2.
What?
So... You are 40 out on the runs,
that's terrible.
And you are 2 out on the wicket. It's not a bad start. It's not a bad start.
I'm the first.
You're first.
And I don't know the game.
My first, my last, my everything.
I'm curious. I'm really curious to find out.
As are the listeners.
How I have 2 wickets.
So we are now going to go through them one by one. So obviously the listeners have got no idea what songs are on this list. So we need to read them out, go through them, and we'll just talk through them one by one, and we'll just get through all 10. All your bands. So the first was a Stony Sleep song, and it was The Kitten Is Clean.
This Kitten Is Clean.
This Kitten Is Clean. So This Kitten Is Clean by Stony Sleep. How many runs? How many wickets?
I thought 4.
4 for...
Oh, 4 for 12. Because 4 from the cat.
So Kitten is 4 because it's got 4 legs.
Right.
4 legs, 4 runs. So 4. Yep.
And then Stony Sleep. I thought you said that if it's a band that with an undetermined
number of legs. So all bands in the rules. Yeah.
12.
Unless it's really specific where you can make it a thing. So if the band was called the Cat, then you don't apply that rule. You would have that as 4 because it's really obvious.
Right.
So Stony Sleep is a band. You don't know how many people are in the band. You presume you don't know. Indeterminate number of legs.
Well, we do know.
You do know, but people generally wouldn't know if they were listening. Because obviously pop cricket is designed to be played like this, but also it's designed, you could be listening to the radio. So you and I could play it, listen to the radio.
Know how many people are in
and therefore you wouldn't know, and therefore you accept that
a blanket rule.
A band is 12. So correct. So for The Kitten Is Clean by Stony Sleep, it is 16 runs. So at the end of that song, with 16 runs for no wickets.
Right.
Cool. So that's the start. If anyone is following this that has not read the rules, they'll be completely confused that that's going. So the next one. Would you like to read out the song and then tell me the score?
White Whorehound.
Yeah.
By French Car and the Bulimic Wizards.
Okay, so let's start with the easy bit. Start with French Car and the Bulimic Wizards.
Right, that indeterminate
number of legs. So 12 again.
Also, right.
12, exactly. So that is 12. And White Whorehound
is some kind of dog. So 4 legs.
Even though a whorehound, is that an actual dog? Or is that a made up dog?
Oh my god, you know what? The truth about that is that it is a herb.
Is it?
Yeah. So it's no runs. It's nothing to do with an animal.
So you're now, I think, doing yourself out of runs because I didn't know that. So I took as well the fact that a whorehound, even if it's made up, does sound like a type of dog. So I've gone for 4 as well.
Right.
So because I've gone for 4 and it's my podcast and my rules and my game and I'm the umpire, then actually you do get 4. So that is another 4 and another 12. Cool. So at the moment we're all good. Next one, To the World by Seraphim.
Does that have to be an infinite amount of people or everyone?
Interesting. So on that one you've put 12.
Yeah, because the world are in the song title.
They are. However, my interpretation of this, and this does come up quite a lot actually. Okay. The world. So for example, what was the big We Are the World? So that came up in a recent game, not on a podcast, but I was chatting about it with some friends, and there was a enormous amount of debate around We Are the World because people thought that should be 12. My interpretation is the world doesn't necessarily imply lots of people and lots of legs. So if you're just talking about to the world, it's
You think
a
a
wicket.
world can be a
thing,
world in
like a planet, a world can be a
world
thing.
in a teardrop?
Yeah, with no, therefore it doesn't necessarily, by its definition, imply people
Right.
empirically, and therefore, I'm afraid in this game, it is no runs, and therefore it is a wicket. So that's one of your 12. So that's a wicket, and then Seraphim
12.
12. Again, it's 12 because it's a band, indeterminate number of legs. So 12. So that's going to be a theme throughout this, so we're not going to concentrate on that too much. Obviously, because we've used all bands, if you're using single artists and duos and trios, then that can change. But
It would be really fun if they're rock fans, then they actually know how many people have been in a band over a period of time. It could just be 3 or 4 or 5 or 6.
yeah, you could do that.
But it's like that's like hardcore.
That's Pro Plus rules, not as in the tablet, but that's Pro Plus as in the rules. So we need to sort of create a whole nother set of rules for that, because then you think it was complicated when I sent you 2 pages. The pedantic stroke professional rules, because what you've got to cover in that, which we don't have to in here, where it gets really difficult, is that gets into whether the band or the artist actually sounds like a person or not. So therefore, if you've got a person's name and it doesn't sound like a person, Eminem, you could argue Eminem's not a name, therefore you wouldn't get 2 runs because it's like, it's not even a suite, because it's not even spelled like a suite. But you could argue then in the pedantic rules that Eminem counts as a wicket because it's not a person, because it's not a real name. So if it's not a real name of a person, then it doesn't count as a person.
So then Madonna isn't. Oh no, that is.
But isn't that, you see? And this is where this is. Oh my! The amount of hours spent arguing and debating this.
Yeah.
And the first time I wrote the book, because there was an ebook and there's a set of books coming out all around pop cricket, like little with different genres, using different types of stuff, which are quite fun. And the first time I wrote the rules, and we went through it, it was using those rules. And so the rule set was ridiculous. And then the problem with it is, if you start to get into foreign names, and I'll take a view that something isn't a name, and then I'll research it and find out actually it is. It's some sort of ancient Welsh name.
But
so,
doesn't it
so
being a person being named that makes it a name?
Well, does it? Does Rag and Bone Man make that a name? See,
Right.
Now, that might be an old-fashioned view. I'm not sure that calling yourself Rag and Bone makes that a name. I think that's just
It's a good name.
calling yourself something. So I don't know. So anyway, that's not the rules that we're playing, but good debate, because it will come up as we go down the line. So next song. Now, I put Our Union, genre 18. Now, I have to tell the listeners, when you looked at this list, you said, and you just saw Our Union, you said, what band was that?
No, that was a different song.
Oh, was it a different song?
Yeah.
Oh, was that one further down? Oh,
Actually,
yes, it was, sorry.
The songs written with poems by Anna Birkin, of which there are 18, genre 18 songs written with poems by Anna Birkin, are just called one-word songs, and that one word is taken from the poem. So Our Union should be Union. Then there's another one later in the list which should just be one word as well.
Okay. And then remind me then, the genre 18, because I remember you give me the album. Was that the album that you produced, and actually the titles of the songs weren't on there? You'd done it all as numbers, and there was some code you had to work out what the
Correct.
things. Was that correct?
Yes.
Because I know that was 2 years ago, 3 years. It might have even been further. What year did that come out?
6 years ago.
Oh, 6 years ago. Wow. Yeah. Because I remember that, and it was all numbers, and then there was some code that you had to work out, and then when you worked out the code, you could work out the tracks. Very intriguing. Again, people can go find it. They can still buy it. They can see the codes and work it all out. Cool. So, Union, it needs to be Our Union for this to work, or my score to work. So, for the purposes of this, Our Union, genre 18. So, we're taking genre 18 as a given. That's 12. You forget the 18 number in it. Our Union, what have we got for that?
I think that's 12.
On what basis?
Because it could be an infinite amount of people.
Yes, so it's talking about hour, but it doesn't specify how many, so it's 12. Perfect. Hey, getting good at this. Getting good at this. Next one, She Had Me, another Stony Sleep song.
Right, 2 people, she and me.
So
4.
She's got 2 legs, me's got 2 legs, so 4. Perfect. Again, so 4 for that, and 12 for Stony Sleep.
Okay.
So the next one,
This is fun.
This is the next one. This
one's a fun one.
Is Lord.
Lord. Is that?
By Seraphim.
Oh yeah, that was that's a great song.
What I love about this is I've written down songs and you're looking at them going, I can't even remember that song. I know it was a long time ago. We are going back. So, Lord by Seraphim. How have you scored Lord by Seraphim?
I've scored the traditional depiction of Lord, our Lord, the Lord.
The Lord.
Having 2 legs.
Okay.
But I am very welcome to
to say that
debate.
That is.
I mean, I could even debate it myself. I mean, you know, there's a depiction of God where he doesn't have legs. He's a wisp. So that would be 0. Or it could be Lord, like Lord of the Manor. Or...
Right. So this is an interesting one. So this isn't, and you have picked up on that. So I have got the same score as you.
Okay.
Or you have got the same score as me. I do have Lord as 2, but my premise would be, if you just saw the song written down, so if you knew nothing about the song, so and I don't know this song particularly.
You haven't read the lyrics.
So I've never read the lyrics, so I don't know what it's about. But if you just saw it written down in a challenge like this, or you heard it on the radio, you heard a DJ talking about, and that was Lord by Seraphim, and we were playing this game by listening to the radio, and I get 1, then you get 1, and we add up all the scores, which is another way of playing it. Say if you're driving in the car and you can't write down, you can play it a couple of ways. We alternate the songs and you add up the scores, or you play like a proper cricket game. You get all the songs until you've got 10 wickets out, and then I do the same, or you get 20 songs and I get 20 songs. So you can actually do it playing it to tracks in the car, listen to the radio, whatever, which is quite a fun way of doing it. This is just, for today, the easiest way to do this is actually to have a pre-written list played down. So in that respect, Lord is 2, because let's not get into any
depictions or God.
Let's not get into that debate today. Especially as you said you had earlier, you said you had quite a complex relationship with religion, so we're not going to get into that right now. Lord in that instance could be Lord of the Manor, and therefore that's what I'm accepting, and therefore it does have 2 legs.
Okay.
So that's where we are. So doing okay so far. Now, so the next one. I'll let you read the next one.
The Wrath of God Packaged, aka Tactical Nuclear Warfare.
And that was a French Car and the Bleeding Wizards song. So before we get into the scoring of that, I have to ask, that is quite a long title and quite a mouthful.
I can't take credit for it.
Okay.
I didn't write it either. I wrote most of the songs for French Car and the Bleeding Wizards, but not all. And that was written by a guy called Bishop. I think his full artistic name is Bishop Dante. Was at some point just called Daniel Parmenter, and is a great programmer and musician and technician, producer, engineer, and he made this death metal like epic. I don't know. It's pretty full on kind of tribal metal song, and then other members threw things at it, but it was his baby, and he named it. I don't really know. I mean, it sounds. I suppose maybe the song sounds like nuclear warfare. It's quite heavy. I
am not familiar with the song, but on the basis of that, I shall have to make it my point to go back and listen to it.
I think if you need to listen to one, if you're going to listen to one metal song in your life,
then that's the one.
It may be that one.
I will promise you that I will go and listen to that one. So after that's really interesting. How have we scored it?
I just infinite 12 because it's so vague. You know, the wrath of God could be, well, you think war and that's people. It could be an army. You're not happy with my analysis. The body language is all wrong.
I'm not having any of that. No, that's a wicket. Because there is no definitive people or number of legs in that song. We're not having the deity religious debate either. So for me, a god doesn't necessarily have legs. So unlike Lord, where you can say there's a different interpretation of a Lord. So God, everyone's perception of God is different. So we'd say this is not a religious podcast, right? My interpretation, therefore, is it's ethereal, no legs. The Wrath of God Packaged, which is the main title, there are no legs.
Actually, Jack Burns, right? I think is he an actor? He was around and he wrote the lyrics for that song. And in fact, I think the Wrath of God packaged was a letter.
Ah, there we are.
So,
and the letter's definitely got no legs.
correct.
So that's it. So that's actually, in my terms, that's a wicket and 12 runs for the Wizards. 3 to go. Leave Me Alone by Razorlight.
I put Infinite 12 because he could be talking to a lot of people. The person is involved, and also he could be talking to one person, but he could be talking to like a football team.
Yeah, but you don't know that, so you can only count. I'm afraid you can only count.
Right.
You can only count the me.
Right, so it is quite
Because you might be talking to somebody, but what you're saying is leave me alone. So the only specific number of legs in that is me or you,
right.
and therefore it's 2.
So it's more literal than
a little bit more literal, yeah, which is fine.
Yeah.
Which is fine.
Okay.
Look, if people are playing this at home, people can play their own rules. Because there's some rules around, and I won't get into it right now because of time. There's some rules about. Funny enough, I was having this debate with Ben last time I saw Ben. I think I've seen him since I've seen you, and we were talking about context and that whether you needed to take things in context and whether words within words. An example was Lionel Richie. You can't in my rules you can't say Lionel is 4 because it's got the word lion in it, right? Because that's like a hidden word within.
Right.
Ben's perspective was, why not? That would make it quite fun.
Right.
Surely you could find, if you could find a hidden. And another example was ZZ Top's Velcro Fly. So Velcro Fly, within context, is talking about a zipper, a zipper you have on trousers. But if you didn't know that and you just saw written down Velcro Fly, then why couldn't you have 6 legs for a fly because it's an insect? So we were talking around, and I won't give it away now. It's in the rules whether you can apply that or not apply it. And again, some of those nuances are in the more complicated professional rules. So that's what we are. So last 2. This was the one where we had the debate. I wrote down in youth. You said it should just be youth. So I apologise for getting that wrong. I thought I'd seen it, but it could be the reference where I got it from. Had it.
Yeah, you probably. It's probably not your fault.
Because I think I saw it, so I do apologise if it's not. It's genre 18. We've already said, for the sake of this, actually all of these are groups. Therefore, by default, they're all 12. So we won't go into much of it. So in youth, what have you got for in youth?
So youth is now. I think. Would that be a wicket, or could that be one person? The youth of one person, is that 2?
What have you put?
I put 12.
And it is an interesting one for debate, and I can see you're now intellectualising, giving everything else, because we've talked about the world thing, and that wasn't, and the leave me alone. I've actually got the same as you. Right. And I did struggle with this one. So even though I made it up and it's my rules, occasionally someone will either challenge you one, and you'll see one, and you'll think, oh, even by my own rules, I'm not sure how to apply that, which is half the fun of it, because things do come up to throw you. My view was, so initially, I had it as a wicket. Right. When I was looking at this yesterday, but I've actually scored it as 12 as well, because I think by definition youth, even if you were talking about people, animals, communities, then I think it does imply, because you wouldn't talk about youth in any other way other than people, therefore it implies legs
other than entities.
Yes, therefore in youth is 12. So we've got the same. So we've come at it from a different way, but we've got the same score. So that's 12 and 12. And then the last one, which we talked about earlier, I think we talked about this I think we might have talked about this off air when we were having a chat before we started. And I said to you that Lady Lazarus was my favourite Stony Sleep song. I might have talked about it on the podcast, I can't remember. So that's why I put it in the list. I put it in the list purely because it was my favourite, and I thought my favourite would be in the list, and it would be on there, and I hope people go and find it because I think it's an absolutely fantastic song. So, and it's probably one of the fairly easiest ones to score, on the most obvious ones.
Right, is that 2 legs?
It is 2 legs for Lady. And Stony Sleep gets 12. So the difference was there's a couple then that you'd scored 12 and then I'd scored a wicket, and that was the difference between the scores. But that's not bad. 162 for 2, you got 192 for 0. But actually, it was just really around the nuances of of the context. So that's pretty good. So that's good. If people are really confused, they can go back to the website to look up the rules. There's a list of rules. They can play themselves.
Just need to get like the fundamental element, really. Just,
yeah, but also if everyone got it right every time, there'd be no fun, right? So
no debate.
And there'd be no debate, which is half the fun. So looking at the time, we probably need to start wrapping up. But I'm aware that there is stuff that we've just not talked about, and I think the one we probably need to finish on, because it's probably, other than doing more stuff with this genre 18, is your book. So we should talk a little bit about your book. We're both published authors, which sounds a little bit grandiose, given we were talking earlier off, so I would nearly said off camera then, that's even more grandiose, off mic, about sales and actually how difficult it is when things are online to produce sales, and hopefully maybe a few listeners might go and find it and buy it, and that would be great, and that will make all of this worthwhile. Even if it's a few, or even if people write nice comments on it for me to pass on to you and all that sort of stuff. So, please go and do it. You're mentioned in my book.
Yes.
I'm mentioned in your book, so it's all a little bit incestuous. But
you're not directly.
No, it's an Easter egg. You said I had to go and find it. I'm really getting confused now, because we've actually been talking for quite a while, and we had sort of a half an hour chat before we even started. So I'm now getting confused about what we talked about downstairs and what we talked about up here. So just give us outline of the book, why you wrote the book, where people can find it, and then I also know that you started on a second book as well. So just give us some gen on all that stuff.
Gen?
General knowledge.
Oh, okay.
General update.
I started the book because of you.
And that this is going to sound really contrived. I genuinely did not know that. So.
Oh, really?
No.
Well, yeah. I mean, I've written diaries and memoirs through my life to record my events and my feelings. Most of them are pretty boring. Reading back at some of them are horrible, just so boring, talking about my feelings. But eventually, I totally forgot about any inkling to write a book. And then, was it Christmas 2015? You, Pete, gobsmacked me by giving me a book that you had written.
Yes, because I think mine came out in like April 2014, so it might have been December 14 actually. I think it was so long ago. I think it was 14 actually, but yeah.
Right. And gobsmacked, and I read it within the next few weeks, and I loved it. I loved it just because it just felt really personal. It felt like there was someone with a really light perspective about life, talking about things that are funny, that was right there. There was nothing between the author and the reader. That's what I loved about it, and that was what inspired my book. 'Cause suddenly I felt for the first time in my life that I had like a perspective, a place to write from. And so that's the style of the book. I just stole it from you.
Well, stolen with pride, hopefully, and then I'm flattered that you took that. So that's good.
And then what else? What was the other question?
We should mention what it's called.
Right, it's called From Stony Sleep to Razorlight, and it's basically my life up until leaving Razorlight, and it's but with a musical perspective. I think my life has been musically focused, so a lot of stuff about music and bands and rock and roll and sex, drugs and rock and roll, obviously.
A lot more in depth than one we've been able to get to today, and some of the twaddle that we've been talking about today. Yeah, I'm sure. So if people want to know the real story, or even if it's piqued some people's interest in terms of your story, some of the bands, if they buy the book or download the book, then they can get into that in loads and loads more detail, which is great. So hopefully all that hangs together nicely and conveniently.
Right.
And let's talk broadly about the period that we've spoken about today, because we've pretty much concentrated, other than we've not really touched a lot on Razorlight, but we've pretty much concentrated on very much your early career. So I guess if people listen to this and they've enjoyed it, then that's a really good follow-up to actually go and download the book and read the book.
Yeah, there's also quite a bit of travelling, because I've in between bands I've done a lot of travelling, and that's as interesting as well. There's been some good stories and I've just that was released a few months ago, and I've just started writing the sequel.
The sequel.
Yeah, called what is it called? Catalonia to
Catalonia to Clearwater.
Yeah, from Catalonia to Clearwater. Catalonia because at the beginning of the book I spent some time there, and then Clearwater because towards the end of the book I will have I wrote an album called Clearwater during that period of, I suppose, 2004 to 2018 is the period of the second book.
Is that genre 18?
Yeah, so that'll be genre 18, Seraphim, and then my life in Colombia.
No, sorry, not the book. In terms of you said you wrote an album. Was that as genre 18 or was that as
genre 18. Yeah, so the first album was genre 18 was a Freudian slip, and then we worked with Anno Birkin's poetry for a few years, and then I went to live in Colombia for a handful of years and had a pretty wild time there. And we'll end possibly with the recording of Clearwater. It's called Clearwater because I wrote the album after visiting a place called San Cipriano in kind of Colombian jungle and near the west coast, and it was incredibly inspirational. And the album, I think, it's the best I've ever written. And I translated it because I think Clearwater packs more of a punch than Aguas Blancas or San Cipriano, so I think it's a great word, and I'm hoping to actually go to Clearwater, which is a place in Florida.
It is indeed, which I'm very familiar with, and I know when we were talking before the podcast this came up, because I presumed that when you put Catalonia to Clearwater that it was about Florida, and I said, hey, I'm really looking forward to talking to you about that on the podcast because I know Clearwater quite well, and then it turns out that you hadn't been there at all and it wasn't to do with that, which is why we haven't had a lot of Florida speak. However, who knows, when we have you back, maybe you would have been there by then, and then we'll have a much longer discussion about Florida, because as you know, I love Florida, and I certainly know that bit of the coastline of Florida quite well.
Maybe you can show me around.
Indeed, that would be great. Quick look at the clock. We probably need to wrap up now. I think we've got enough stuff. It was absolutely fascinating conversation. It was brilliant to chat to you about some stuff that I didn't know, even though we know each other. I hope it was enjoyable for you too. It's not been too intense. We're going to put lots of links on the website, popcricket.com, for people to go and find. If there's if two things that you would recommend people go and look at and check out if they want to know a bit more about Christian Smith or Shïan Smith, what should they go to first?
Well, you'll get it if you put in Smith-Pancorvo or Shïan. Even if you put in Shïan Smith-Pancorvo, my legal name, or Christian Smith-Pancorvo, you'll get links to my book and probably Facebook and wiki page and stuff. I'd say it's like a source of great art that has been lost in my life. I'd say French Car and the Brilliant Wizards is the place to go, because that was 5 pretty great kind of artistically challenging and hopefully advancing albums, and great as a rock fan and as a music fan. That's like the diamond in the rough or undiscovered sources.
Cool. So on that basis, then I will make sure I put some links to French Cup or French Car and the Brilliant Wizards to give it its full moniker. We shall do that. There's loads of stuff that we haven't talked about. So in the break, we decided we are definitely going to do another one of these. Not sure when, because of diaries and travelling and all that sort of stuff, but we'll definitely do. But what we will have is we're definitely going to do one with you and Ben. Hopefully we're going to record that in the next week or so, but it might go out a bit later. But we'll definitely get you back, because there's just so much stuff that we haven't talked about, whether it be Razorlight, the new book, and a whole bunch of stuff that's on my notes.
And Genre 18.
And Genre 18, yes. Yeah. And a whole bunch of stuff on my notes, which we haven't even got to yet. So on that, I think we're going to have to call that a day.
Okay.
and have a great Christmas. I know I'm going to see you at Christmas. We were recording this just before Christmas, but have a great Christmas, and we will speak to you again very soon.
Yay! Thank you very much.